Good afternoon and welcome to Sound Advice Live. I'm Angela Lamont and I'm joined by a top team of experts to answer your questions and make sure that if you're thinking of changing up your TV, your home cinema or your hi-fi, you've got all the information you need to be able to choose the right thing for you. Thanks for joining us today. Wherever you are, it's probably hot out there, so it's just as well we're looking at all the coolest gear in here. Throughout the show, as well as the experts that are going to be joining me on screen, we have also got experts coming into the chat, so feel free to pop your questions in there. If your question is about something we're talking about, then Michelle is in the chat and she will pop your questions straight through to the studio so that the experts can answer your questions while we're on air. So feel free to ask any questions you like. Let us know what decisions you're currently struggling with about what to buy. Importantly, why you're struggling with those decisions. What is it that's holding you back from knowing what's right for you? And we will see if we can help. Michelle will also be dropping in some helpful links as we go along so that you can get some more information from the website too. So first up, we are going green today. And I'm not talking envy here. So today we are taking some time to think about how we can act more sustainably. We all know that fast fashion is bad and vintage is good. We all know that we should reduce our food waste and that changing our home energy tariff to renewables is a good thing. But did you ever think about what constitutes green hi-fi? Well, I'm glad to say that Andrew and Ed are up next to get us thinking on that very topic. So please welcome Andrew Everard and Ed Selley. Thanks for joining us, guys.
Hi.
Hi, Angela.
And here we are, sweltering on the hottest day of the year, so we don't have to mention climate change. We're feeling it all around us. But something we've never thought about, well, I've never thought about before, you guys obviously have. Can hi-fi ever be green?
Well, you opened up by talking about vintage. The problem is that vintage hi-fi, almost all of it used valves, which produce a lot of heat, and operated at something called Class A, which means the amplifier is using full power even when it's not playing music. In fact, the louder you play the music, the cooler it gets. In the good old days, we used to say, well, that's just an inconvenience and something you live with, but the energy cost, if you can be completely pragmatic about it, the energy cost is getting silly now. I mean, I tested an amplifier a couple of weeks ago which was pulling 350 watts just on tick over. That's 7p an hour. And a couple of months before that, I reviewed a couple of huge mono amplifiers, which incidentally weighed 1/4 ton a piece and were £500,000 for the pair. Their maximum power consumption is 10 kilowatts, so that's £3 an hour, and you need 2 of them. So that's £6 an hour just for you listening, and they heated the room very nicely, to the extent I had to stop listening because the room was too hot.
So not the best choice for a day like today for sure, and not the best choice looking ahead when we're all trying to be a little bit greener about our choices, not to mention the fact that if you are going to use more electricity, then obviously the fuel prices have all gone up and seem set to keep going up as well. So as well as the environmental impact, we've got an impact on the wallet as well. So talk me through how some things are greener than others, what tech they use or what measures the manufacturers have started taking.
Yes, this is a degrees of sort of pragmatism, if you will. Before you embark on more radical solutions, which we will come to in just a moment, there are a number of things that manufacturers have been doing both through enthusiasm and compulsion over the last couple of years. The big one, and it sounds preposterous in the context of many of the devices we use at home, but it is a relatively recent addition to home hi-fi, is proper energy efficient standby states. When I say energy efficient standby states, quite a few pieces of kit I've tested over the years have gone into a standby mode, and a red light comes on the front and all sorts of things, but actually they fundamentally are still sitting at tick over. So a genuine less than 1 watt, or indeed less than half watt standby is now something that more and more manufacturers are successfully implementing. This is harder than it sounds with hi-fi equipment. If you've got a socking great big toroidal power supply, it isn't. There is no sort of half watt method of that sitting in any usable state. So it requires you to have sort of secondary supplies that will allow the main supply to wake up from there. And this significantly reduces your electricity bill, because obviously when the unit isn't doing anything, it is consuming a great deal less electricity. Further to that, even more recently, and it must be said in the face of some opposition, although I wait to see if the current situation changes that, a number of pieces of equipment that we see now will also turn themselves off after a given period of time. Now, as recently as 10 years ago, that was an anathema for most manufacturers. Indeed, certain companies still very much develop and design equipment with a view to it being left on all the time, with the commensurate costs in terms of running. But now a number of products, right up to and including many thousands of pounds, will auto standby after a period of time. You can usually, if it really offends your sensibilities, you can turn this sort of functionality off. But as far as I'm concerned, it's a very good thing. You head out, I just need to pop to the shop or something like so on and so forth, and you may have forgotten to switch everything off. You come back and it's successfully turned itself off, and it isn't simply chewing its way through your domestic electricity bill. So things like that can take an existing design and can in turn make it more efficient without having to do anything more significant and more radical. But there are more radical options available beyond that as well.
Just before we go on to the more radical options, though, Ed, for a consumer, if I'm buying a piece of kit, any kit really, if it's got a standby button, I assume it's got standby. But we've all read articles that say standby isn't as environmentally friendly as you think it ought to be. So how do we now know, at this stage in the game, what kind of standby our electrical items are using? Unless we've got a multimeter or going around with the smart meter handset.
Well,
monitoring.
I'm afraid it's not automatically obvious. A number of products that successfully pass the 0.5 watt standby rule, as I believe it is now, will trumpet that on the packaging, because it is a meaningful benchmark to which a product has to pass a series of tests to adhere. Otherwise, I'm afraid it's a bit of a movable feast. In my listening room at the moment, there is a very large amplifier which is entirely capable of running a 0.5 watt standby function, and it has that on the box to mark that out. But then there's also a digital to analog converter which consumes far less power, but actually its standby is 10 watts. So it's less electricity consumed than leaving it on all the time, but it's still nowhere near as efficient as some other products will be. Now, at the sort of many thousands of pounds cost that these products are, it's still going to be a discretionary area for you to choose how important this is for you. But it is possible, if you wish, to choose exceptionally high-performing pieces of equipment at high-end price points, which is considerably more efficient than products that notionally compete in the same price point. And that information is available if you ask the manufacturers in a fairly insistent way. They will eventually usually cough to their standby figures if you ask them nicely or indeed enough. So yeah, you can find out, but often it's not that easy.
I can see a new category about to appear on the Sound Advice website at this rate, so that we can all check what kind of power consumption things have got. You also mentioned going more radical. Andrew, Ed, what are you talking about when you mean more radical?
Well, there is one well-known hi-fi manufacturer that doesn't even have a power switch on the front of its products. And we all got very excited when they launched a product which had a standby power supply. So that operates the standby, and then when you actually start playing music, that switches off and the big power supply switches on. Now, when we all said, well done, you're going green, they said, no, that's not why we did it. Apple require us to do it. Because the product has Apple AirPlay, it has to be kept powered up. That's the only reason they did it, not for environmental reasons, but to keep Apple happy. Anyway, it is possible to get more efficient amplification in amplifiers. I mean, it's the power amplifier section in an amplifier that uses all the power. And Class D, which some people think means digital, but in fact doesn't, has been developed for a long time. It's always been a thing that real audiophiles said sounds rubbish and it sounds digital because it's digital, but it isn't. But it's now got very good, and to the extent that some high-end manufacturers are choosing it, it used a lot less energy. You look at NAD products, you look at some more recent Marantz products, they all use these Class D amplifiers from a company called Yikes, who are based in Holland, and they've really developed this stuff, and it's as good as the old-fashioned, energy-hungry amplification.
Okay, now we are nearly out of time, so very quickly, either of you, do you think there's much more manufacturers can do?
There is one more way of being more efficient, which is to consider your system as a whole. You will note on our speaker reviews on the website, they will list the sensitivity of the device, which is the amount of noise it can produce at 1 meter from 1 watt of input power. And if you look at the different reviews we've got, that varies dramatically. If you have sensitive loudspeakers, you don't need a lot of power to drive them, which in turn means that you can use an amplifier that develops less power. And it can do that in a way which may not be as environmentally friendly as the Class D technology that Andrew was talking about, but it's using sufficiently small amounts of power that it's less important. This is a different way of going about things, and it does require you to think, I'm going to have to use the word holistically. It requires you to think both about your speakers and your amplifier at the same time. But if you do make these choices, you can enjoy amplifier technology that you are perhaps more comfortable with, more familiar with, but you're using much less power whilst you do it. So I think we've started to see a number of these lower powered sort of desktop and small footprint amplifiers, and I think this is going to be something we're going to see more and more of, because it is a perfectly valid way of constructing a system which is still green, but perhaps doesn't offend sensibilities and is more reassuring for you on a long-term basis.
Brilliant. We have no more time for a deeper discussion, but I look forward to maybe some articles appearing on Going Green with HiFi very soon. Andrew and Ed, thank you so much for joining me. Andrew is next up as well, reviewing a streaming amp, but Ed, don't you go anywhere, because we need you back later on to take a look at a very, very expensive pair of headphones for us. Right, hands up, who's got a streaming amp at home? Well, no, actually, I haven't, I will admit. I can't see down the internet either, so I don't know how many hands have gone up, but I'm guessing probably not many yet. Although these days I tend to listen to most of my music streamed, I often listen to it in the office now, where I've got a very nice amp and pair of speakers. My traditional listening space in the living room, where I've got a beautiful amp and speakers, I don't tend to use it. And then I'm streaming from Spotify on my phone, connected to a portable speaker. I can almost feel Andrew wincing as I say that. So it's time we started talking about streaming and streaming amps, because when I've got a lovely hi-fi sitting there doing nothing and I'm streaming off my phone, something feels wrong. So I am delighted to be joined by amp expert turned streaming expert, Andrew Everard. Now, Andrew, you've been reviewing hi-fi kit for 30 years. So what have you got for us today, and why do you want to talk about streaming?
Well, it's a product which I thought wasn't going to happen. It's the Marantz 40N, Model 40N amplifier. When Marantz launched their new style products a year ago, they said, we're only going to do pure analog amplifiers. And all the streaming, well, actually streaming in that system was on a SACD player, which also had streaming. But now they've launched an amplifier which also streams. And the question, of course, is, hold on, if you went purist last time round and said you couldn't do this in an amplifier without messing up the sound quality. How have you managed to do it now? And it's actually, they've had these amplifiers further down their range, but they've never had a high-end product. And the question is really, what is it? Is it an amplifier? Is it a streaming system? Well, it's both. They're selling it as a purist amplifier, but they're also, if you look at all their wonderful lifestyle pictures of couples dancing in their living rooms to smoky jazz, it's also a complete system you just need to add speakers to.
And
that's it.
Is that the case? Is it just an add speakers and, slide your old amp out, put a streaming amp in? You might very possibly have a nice pair of speakers already, and we're done.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's what it's there for. They've managed to design it so it will drive a wide range of speakers, and they've also managed to get the streaming in without compromising on the basic sound quality.
Can you say how they did that? Because you seem quite clear that a while ago you were saying, no, it's going to compromise the sound quality, but now you're saying it doesn't compromise the sound quality at all.
The thing that gets people's hands thrown up in the air when you're a purist audiophile is you can't have digital and analog in the same box because the digital interferes with the analog, and you certainly can't have a phono stage for a turntable because the signals there are tiny and are therefore much more prone to being interfered with by the digital section. So what they've done in this product is they've built a box within a box, and then within that box they've built two more boxes, well, three more boxes actually. So the streaming board is in a separate housing, but so is the digital conversion section, and so is the phono stage. Now that'll get some people going, because having the digital converter and the phono stage in the same box is asking for trouble, they'd say. But in fact, it's a box. The streaming section is boxed off from the other two bits, and the other two bits are boxed off from each other. So everything is isolated from everything else.
So does this mean, do you really think that if somebody is thinking of buying a new amp now, they should really seriously ask themselves why they wouldn't buy a streaming amp?
If they stream music, there are still some people who will stick to saying, oh, I only play records, and that's it. In that case, you can do without all the streaming. The advantage of a product like this, though, as you were saying about playing music from your phone, this will actually connect to your home internet and will then stream music direct rather than through your phone, which means higher quality. It means all the pressure is taken off the link between your phone and the amplifier, so you're getting much purer music coming through.
And presumably you can connect via Ethernet as well as stick it on the Wi-Fi?
Ethernet and Wi-Fi. It's perfectly good with Wi-Fi unless you're streaming very high resolution music, which most people won't. But I mean, I would always go for Ethernet just for stability. I wouldn't go for it on the grounds of sound quality because I'm yet to be convinced that there is a difference. But it will play from Ethernet, from Wi-Fi, from Bluetooth, from AirPlay 2, all those sort of things. And that's what it does.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that. Now, just before you go, we've had a question in. You were talking about the old days and more modern amps. We've got a question in from Richard, who says, I'm also interested to hear you think the sound quality of current hi-fi compares with, say, a name system from 20 years ago. Does it compare?
Well, I can tell you because I have both. A name system from 20 years ago will still sound better than this, but the name system from 20 years ago probably in real terms now is a £10,000, £15,000 system. This product is £2,199 and you add on your speakers, and that's it.
Fabulous. Andrew, thank you so much for that review.
Welcome.
And if you want to read Andrew's written review for this streamer, Michelle's going to put the link to that in the chat, so you can click on that and go to the Sound Advice website and read the written review of the Marantz 40N amp that Andrew just did the review of. And if that particular streamer isn't for you, then we have some other streamer reviews as well. So again, Michelle will paste that link into the chat and you can have a look and compare it to some different streaming amps as well. So let me know in the chat, has that helped you to make up your mind, or did you actually just tune in for our next item on headphones and now you're tempted to buy a streaming amp as well? Let me know in the chat. So next up, Ed will be back talking ultimate headphones, and Verity will be offering alternatives for those of us with champagne tastes but only lemonade pockets. So it's time to talk headphones. I admit I have quite a range of headphones, from some ancient little fold-up travel Sennheisers. I don't even want to think about how long ago I bought them, to my favourite, but not Ed's favourite, open back Grados. But thankfully we have two proper experts here who know rather more than me on the subject. We have Ed Selley and Verity Burns. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
Hi.
So we're going to be talking headphones now, but not just any old headphones, right? So with some things, you really do get what you pay for, and if you pay more, you're likely to get more. But we might come across a threshold where more isn't more anymore, if you know what I mean. Before we talk about the really almost painfully expensive ones though, Verity, can you talk us through some wireless options maybe for people who are on the move or you just want to move about?
Sure. I think obviously wireless headphones have become so much popular, particularly since phone manufacturers started getting rid of the 3.5mm jack and almost forcing our hand to go wireless. And that they come in all sorts of formats. These are the H95s by B&O. We've got a review on the Sound Advice website, so you can check that out. They are towards the higher end of the market. I think they're eight or £900, I believe. So they are still towards the top end. These are the Sony XM5s, which are Sony have come into the market rather late on the kind of wireless noise cancelling headphone market compared to manufacturers like Sennheiser, who've been in it for so long, but have done so well, and they're the latest ones in the range, and fantastic they are as well. So I think the thing with wireless headphones is you've got to look at things like battery life. Of course, you want to make sure that you're going to be covered for whether you're taking a plane now that we can again, or whether you're just thinking about a commute or taking your headphones down the gym or whatever it is that you're wanting to do. Obviously battery life is really important. Audiophiles still can love wireless headphones. There has been a divide, like I said, for years, but since streaming has become better quality, and devices have moved on as well, and things like Bluetooth have improved, you need to consider that as well. It does get a little bit complicated, so I'll keep it kind of top level, but something like the iPhone, for example, isn't able to send over Bluetooth, to use the highest quality Bluetooth, which is like aptX HD, or Sony has a proprietary one called LDAC, which is able to transmit higher than CD quality audio without any wires, which is fantastic. So it's something to look out for if music quality is really, really important to you. You need to make sure that the headphones that you're buying support it, but also the device that you have support it as well. So that's really important.
Thank you. So having taken a quick look at wireless, let's take a quick look at wired. Ed, do you want to talk us through wired headphones and what we should look out for when buying those?
The single most important thing that you want to look out for with wired headphones is deciding what is going to work best for you in the space that you will be listening in. The big divide is between closed back and open back designs. Now, you've got a pair of grips tucked to your side, which are open back. This means that the driver not only works against your ear, but it is venting back out to the outside world. This is something of a Grado trademark, and there are a number of other headphone manufacturers that use the same principle. The result is that these sound airy and spacious. There's more room around the sound. It's much more effective at giving you the impression of pushing sound in front of you. The less good news is that anyone in the room at the same time as you is going to be treated to not significantly less level than you're getting in your ear, which is going to make you tremendously unpopular if that other person is trying to do something which had you put headphones on in the first place. Closed back headphones are exactly as the name suggests. They vent only towards the ear, and the rear of the enclosure is designed to keep all of that sound in. Now, there are ways and means of making sure that that sound isn't radiated back towards the ear, which affects how you hear things and it impedes with sound quality. But in an absolute sense, for the highest possible performance, you will generally find that open back will give you more bang at any given price point than a closed back design. But equally, if you're looking at buying a pair of headphones to continue to listen to a piece of audio equipment whilst other people are in the room, it is simply impractical to consider open back headphones, because it fails that falls at the first hurdle of trying to ensure that the other people don't hear what you're hearing. Now, it also goes without
Sorry, I was just going to say, while we're on the topic of noisy environments, we also need to talk about noise-cancelling headphones. And we've got a question that has come in. So if you wouldn't mind answering this question from Murray, what's the best noise-cancelling system for headphones? And does it adversely affect the sound, the quality that you're getting?
Right. In the last 5 years, we have had a genuinely revelatory period in terms of noise cancelling. It used to be that noise cancelling systems could handle something like a flat noise of an airliner cabin or something like that reasonably effectively. It could apply a fixed amount of cut to a fixed amount of noise coming in. These days we have adaptive systems. They use microphones that compare the sound on the inside and the outside of the headphone and respond dynamically. So there's always as much noise cancelling as is required, not a flat response noise cancelling. This means that the level of performance on offer is exceptional. Now, in terms of who's the best, I have to be in some ways impartial about this, because there are different strokes for different folks. Bowers and Wilkins go long on being able to handle everyday noise, peaks, troughs, so on and so forth. Bose, who's been active in noise cancelling for a very, very long period of time, they still offer perhaps the most significant reduction in exterior noise coming in. In terms of it affecting sound performance, this is where it gets really interesting, because you do get certain companies now, Philips with their latest L3, and to a lesser extent the Bowers & Wilkins PX7S2, which I've just been tinkering about with. These are products. The Philips actively sounds better with its noise cancelling engaged than with it disengaged. The Bowers & Wilkins sounds exactly the same across both. It is no longer the case where you flick it on and tonality is affected, things go weird. Almost any of the headphones I've tested in the last calendar year in the £300 and above category, you can use the noise cancelling and they sound every bit as good as they do being run as conventional headphones.
That is fabulous, Ed. And Murray, I hope that answers your question. We've got another question coming, which I think is going to be for Verity. This is from Richard, and he says, even if you are paying only £200 or £300 for a pair of headphones, are you losing out on the quality if you then connect by Bluetooth?
That's it goes back to what I was talking about before. It really does depend on what the Bluetooth, what is the Bluetooth format that it's capable of. That's why I said to look out for things like aptX HD, or if you're buying from Sony, that you'll see that increasingly they're using their proprietary LDAC technology. But what you need is the headphones that support it, but you also need your source device to support it as well. And like I said, the iPhone, for example, doesn't do that. And I believe some of the most recent Galaxy headphones, Samsung Galaxy devices, phones, they don't support it either. So it's a tricky one. You need to make sure Source and headphones support that. I mean, Bluetooth has got better over the years anyway. The stability has got so much better. It used to be a nightmare for dropping out connections all the time. So that's fantastic. That's really good news. But for the very best sound quality, you might want to consider perhaps a standalone device, standalone kind of music player, which will support the LDAC or the aptX HD formats, or consider a separate DAC, which is a whole kind of another topic really. But you can get one for another time. But you can get portable DACs that will help to boost and improve your sound quality from a Source device.
I think we're ending up writing the content for the next show as we go along in this one, aren't we? Things we want to spend more time on. And if you are in the chat, let us know what you want to spend more time on, and we'll make a list and make another show with all those things in. So we can't finish this session, even though we are pretty much out of time, guys. We can't finish this session without answering the question that we teased at the top. We promised people that you would be reviewing, or very quickly reviewing, a very, very, very painfully a pair of headphones. And Ed, I believe you got your hands on a £5,000 pair of headphones.
I did. It's the Tplus A. They're a German company. They've never made a pair of headphones until they embarked on this, and they figured that we would go from the top down. So what you've got there is the Solitaire P. As said, it is yours for a not inconsiderable £5,000. It's really important when you start looking at a product of this nature that you have to place it in a degree of context. First of all, you mentioned earlier, is there a point where things stop improving, or at least they stop improving at the same rate? Of course there is. Is this twice as good as a pair of £2,500 headphones? No. Is it 5 times as good as a pair of £1,000 headphones? Absolutely not. You are paying ever greater sums of money to make ever smaller improvements. That is the law of diminishing returns, and it applies to everything in our lives. However, this is a product where they didn't set out to say, we're going to make headphones that cost X. They set out to make a pair of headphones that were as good as they could possibly be, and saw how much they cost at the end. And I'm childish enough to admit that approach is something that I still admire hugely. It's so it's so unusual in this day and age. And they are sublime pieces of equipment. They are made from a tremendous selection of materials. They're not showy, but they are exquisitely built. They use a driver system which is called planar magnetic, which instead of having something that looks like a little speaker shrunk down inside of the enclosures, actually has a membrane across which a voice coil has been sprayed as a conductive fluid. So the whole surface becomes a transducer. And as you might expect, especially as it's then driven by 19 magnets aside, it's not the sort of thing that is easy to do or indeed cheap to do. Where a product like this makes sense is not as an addition to your hi-fi system. There will be a fortunate group of people that get to do that, but that's not what the aim of the game is here. If you're watching this either live or as a recording, or you're listening to it later on, and you have got a room where you have really struggled to dial a big pair of loudspeakers in, and sometimes even any loudspeakers in, this is a way of getting a high-end listening experience in rooms that otherwise simply will not play ball. You're not looking to have them as well as your speakers, you're looking to have them instead of your speakers, and you construct a system around headphone listening. And the results are, it is arguably one of the most cost-effective ways of achieving an extremely high-end listening experience, with the caveat that it's a listening experience for one, and you need to make sure that you're comfortable and happy wearing headphones for very long periods of time. But nevertheless, if you start to view them in that context, whilst I'm never going to insult your intelligence and tell you that £5,000 is cheap, it is a surprisingly efficient way of making high-end audio work in spaces where speakers fear to tread.
So that's a very specialist pair of headphones, and as you say, it's not necessarily being proposed as an additional pair of headphones. And like you, I appreciate the purist approach that they took to actually doing this. And if you've got a really difficult room, I can see that that is a solution. Verity, if we're just talking expensive headphones for someone who wants a really super good pair of headphones, and we don't feel the need to making that our entire listening experience, what have you discovered that might not be quite £5,000?
Well, again, we could go into so many different types, and again, back to the wired versus wireless. If you've got a fifth of the budget, something like the Sennheiser HD800S, they're about £1,200. They're a fantastic pair of headphones, but they're still a considerable outlay for a lot of people. But fantastic nonetheless. If you've got something more around the £300-400, the Sony XM5s that we spoke about right at the beginning of the piece, they are a fantastic kind of across the board lovely pair of headphones. They tick the wireless box, they tick the noise cancelling box, and they do all of that within a reasonable budget, and do sound fantastic. No, they don't sound like the Sennheisers, and they definitely sound like the Tplus A's, but for a lot of people, they're going to be a fantastic pair of headphones, and ones that they can listen to, wherever they need to, really, which is it will be a really key buying decision for a lot of people.
I think of all the chats we've had today, that is our most wide-ranging options. Headphones are so personal, aren't they? It's a really personal buying experience. People use them for really, really different applications. Some people have a library, a veritable wardrobe of headphones. Some people have one pair and stick to them for everything and want to invest in one super good pair. But thank you for reviewing all of those for us, Verity and Ed.
You.
So Michelle has a couple of great links to drop into the chat there. One is for all the current headphone reviews on the Sound Advice website, and also there's a tyre kicker's guide to choosing the right pair for you, because that seems to be absolutely key in this, is getting the right pair for you. Now, if you want to do some reviews for us, let us know. Sometimes we buy bits of kit that disappoint, no matter how exciting the marketing blurb was. Sometimes we buy the piece of kit that we could afford, and actually we get it home and it turns out to be so much better than we had ever dreamed it could be. So we are interested in knowing your experiences of living with a piece of kit and how it fits into your life. If you would like to do a review like that, let us know. Michelle is going to drop the email address into the chat right now, so you can email us and let us know that you would like to do a review, and it will help our Sound Advice community, everyone sharing their advice and their hits and misses, if you like, to find some absolute gems that we might never otherwise have looked at, because they're maybe perfect for what somebody wants. So tell us what kit you're living with that has turned up to live up to the hype, or even surpassed the hype, and we can share that with our community. So thank you for all your questions and comments today. I hope that we've managed to answer your questions to your satisfaction there in the chat. All of these items will be going up onto our YouTube channel, so if you did miss anything on today's show, you can just dial it up on catch up and find us there. Sadly, we're out of time for this show, but please do join us next time. Don't forget to hit subscribe on the YouTube channel so you don't miss it. I'll see you next time.